I never meant for it to go this far. At least, that's what I used to tell myself. But that night, the one I can't stop replaying, I didn't stop it. I didn't even try. I told my husband I was going for a walk. It was a warm August night, and I said I needed some air. He didn't even look up from his phone when I closed the door behind me, and I think that was the moment I stopped feeling guilty. The streets were quiet. The air smelled like late summer, soft, a little sweet. That mix of cut grass and someone grilling 2 blocks away. My sandals whispered against the pavement. And with every step, I got further from who I was supposed to be. Because I wasn't walking without direction. I knew exactly where I was going. Exactly who I was going to see. He was only 5 blocks away. But the ache in my chest made it feel like miles. We hadn't talked in weeks. Not really. A few messages. A glance across the grocery store aisle. That kind of silence that feels louder than words ever could. He said he respected my boundaries. I said I loved my husband. But somehow both those things could be true. And still not feel true enough. I walked past the park. Past the bakery that was always closed too early. Past the spot where he kissed my shoulder once. So light I thought I imagined it. But I didn't. And that's the problem. Because since that moment, every part of me had been waiting to feel it again. And then, I saw him. Right where I knew he'd be. Right under the old streetlight with the flickering bulb. Like something out of a memory I wasn't supposed to keep. He didn't move. Didn't smile. Just stood there watching me like I was the last thing he ever wanted to forget. And that's when I realized. I wasn't walking toward him. I was falling. He didn't say a word. But I felt everything. It was in the way his eyes met mine. Steady, quiet. Like he'd been waiting there long before I arrived. My steps slowed without me meaning to. And for a second I just stood there. Not a wife, not anyone's anything. Just a woman whose heart was louder than her thoughts. I should have said something. A joke. A question. Something to remind us both this was still reality. But instead, I just walked. Right up to him. Close enough to smell the hint of his cologne mixed with the night air. And then he reached out. Not to grab me. Not to pull. Just an open hand. Waiting. And my fingers, they moved like they'd been here before. Like they remembered something I wasn't allowed to speak out loud. When our hands touched. It wasn't dramatic. It was warm. Real. Quiet in that kind of way that makes your breath catch. He still hadn't said anything. But his thumb moved. Just barely, brushing over the inside of my wrist. And my whole body responded. Like heat beneath skin. Like my pulse had been holding its breath until now. I shouldn't have come, I whispered. And the way he looked at me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't triumph. It was softness. Longing. Like he'd already forgiven me for everything I hadn't done yet. I know, he said. But he didn't let go. And neither did I. We stood like that. In the middle of a sleeping street, 2 people pretending time wasn't real. The breeze caught the hem of my dress. His eyes followed it like he was memorizing every sway. And just before he spoke again, I felt it. That shift. The moment when wanting turns into needing. He stepped closer. And I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't even a full step. Just enough to close the space between us. Enough for the warmth of his body to find mine in the night air. I didn't move. Couldn't. Because the second he was that close, I wasn't in control anymore. Not of my thoughts, not of my breath. And definitely not of the way my body leaned in. Barely, instinctively, like gravity had a favorite. He looked down, eyes catching mine like he already knew the answer. To every question I hadn't asked. I missed you, he said. Just 3 words. Soft. Careful. But they broke through me like thunder in the quiet. Because I had missed him too. In a way that made no sense. In a way that had nothing to do with logic or vows or what I should have felt. It was the kind of missing that seeps into your bones. That lingers in the silence after dinner. That keeps your hands still when you wish they were somewhere else. And when he said it, I didn't even try to lie. My fingers found his chest. Just the edge of his shirt. And I held on like that small contact could anchor me. He didn't move. Didn't press. He just let me be there. In the space between wrong and inevitable. And then, his forehead touched mine. No kiss. No rush. Just warmth. Breath against breath. His hand on the small of my back, steady, patient. My eyes closed, because everything inside me was louder than the world outside. And for a single suspended moment, I let myself wonder what it would feel like to stop pretending I didn't want this. The first kiss didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like coming home. There wasn't a warning. No dramatic pause, no question. Just stillness. And then his mouth brushed against mine, like he was remembering something we hadn't lived yet. It was soft. Too soft, almost like he was giving me the chance to stop it. But I didn't. I leaned in, and something in me let go. Not of my life. Not of my choices. But of that quiet ache I'd been carrying. The one I kept pushing down. Every time I saw him in passing and told myself it's nothing. It was never nothing. Not with him. His hand slid up my spine, slow and grounding, fingertips barely tracing the fabric of my dress, until I was more aware of my skin than I'd ever been. I kissed him like I'd been waiting, like I didn't know when I'd get to feel this again, like the night was borrowed, and we were on the edge of losing it, when he finally pulled back. His lips lingered, still close enough that I could feel the next breath he took. His voice was barely a whisper. "You still want to leave?" And God, I wish he hadn't asked that, because the answer was too complicated, too dangerous. "I don't know," I said, but my hands were already tangled in the fabric of his shirt. And the way he looked at me, eyes soft like he didn't expect anything more than this moment, it made me want to stay, just for a little longer, just until the night gave us a reason to walk away. He took my hand, and for once I didn't think. Not about the house I'd left behind. Not about the man waiting for me, asleep under clean white sheets. Not about what any of this made me. I just followed. His fingers wrapped around mine like they belonged there, like they'd been reaching for me in every quiet moment I'd spent, trying to convince myself I was fine. We didn't talk. We just walked, side by side, like the silence was safer than anything we could say out loud. The street was lit only by scattered porch lights and that same flickering bulb behind us. Somewhere a wind chime moved. Somewhere someone's dog barked once, then went quiet again. It felt like the whole world had gone still, just for us. He led me down a side street I never walked alone, past a rusted gate, through a narrow path between overgrown fences. And then we were there. His place. I'd never seen it this late. The windows glowed soft amber, curtains pulled just enough to keep the outside world away. He looked at me once more, giving me one last second, to run, to turn back, to pretend none of this had happened. But my feet didn't move. Not away. Only forward. The door opened with a soft creak. I stepped inside. The air was warm, smelled faintly of cedar and something sweet. Maybe vanilla. Maybe him. He didn't reach for me right away. He gave me space. Time. But the space between us, it didn't stay empty for long, because I turned. And in that moment, with my back against the door, and his eyes locking onto mine like he already knew how this would end, I realized something. I hadn't just walked away from my husband tonight. I'd walked away from the part of me that was always waiting for permission to feel something more. When he touched me, it wasn't wild. It was worship. Like he'd waited too long to rush. Like every inch of his hand already knew what I needed before I did. He didn't press me against the door. Didn't steal anything from me. He just stepped in close. So slow, so sure. And placed his palm on my waist like it was a question, not a claim. And when I didn't pull away, he answered it with his body. His forehead brushed mine again, just like before. But this time I felt the tremble in his breath. We weren't saying anything, but everything in us was speaking. Through the way I tilted my head, the way his fingers spread at the base of my spine, the way my lips parted without a sound. His mouth found my shoulder first. Not my lips. Not my neck. Just the soft place where fabric met skin. A single kiss. Slow. Steady. So warm I almost gasped. And then another. Lower. More sure. My hands found his arms, solid, familiar. And I held on as if the ground wasn't quite real anymore. The room was dim, lit by a single lamp in the corner. Shadows curled along the walls, soft and forgiving, like they knew this wasn't meant for anyone else's eyes. I closed mine, let my head fall back. and he traced the line of my collarbone. Like it was a secret he wasn't sure he was allowed to know. My heart wasn't beating steady anymore. It was rushing, tripping, falling, and somehow, his breath found rhythm with mine. There was no rush, no noise, just heat, fingers, breath, and that aching feeling of finally being touched in the way you didn't know you'd been starving for. We didn't speak. Our bodies did. Every glance, every pause, every brush of skin. It was a language I didn't know I spoke. Until he taught me how to listen. He took his time. Like he didn't want to miss a single reaction. Like he wanted to feel every tremble beneath my skin. Not just touch it. And I let him. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to pretend I was okay. I didn't have to be a wife or a woman holding herself together. I could just be wanted. Completely. Quietly. Honestly. His hands moved like he was reading me. Not rushing, not claiming, just learning. Exploring. And my body answered. In size. In the way my hips shifted, slow and searching. In the way my fingers curled against his back like I needed to anchor myself to something real. There was no music. Just the rhythm of breath. And the occasional sound of skin meeting skin. Not in lust but in longing. He kissed places that had nothing to do with desire. My temple. The inside of my wrist. The dip of my spine. And it made me feel known. Cherished in a way I hadn't let myself imagine for a long, long time. He didn't ask for more. He waited for it. Waited for me to give it. And I did. Not all at once. But piece by piece. Like shedding the parts of myself I no longer recognized. Until all that was left was the woman I used to be. The one I'd buried under years of routine and silence. And as we moved, slow aching close, I realized this wasn't just about him. It was about me. Finally letting myself feel again. In the morning I went home. But I didn't come back the same. The sun was barely up. That soft golden light that makes everything look too gentle to be real. Birds were just starting to stir. And the air had that cool bite that only comes right before the day fully wakes. I walked alone. No hand in mine. No words exchanged. Just the sound of my footsteps. And the echo of everything I wasn't ready to say out loud. When I closed the front door behind me, the house was still. He, my husband, was asleep on the couch, TV still humming quietly. A blanket half draped over him. One arm dangling like he never noticed I'd left. I stood there for a long time, watching the rise and fall of his chest, the familiar shape of him, and I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel guilt. I just felt sad, because I knew what I had done, and I knew why I had done it. Not because I wanted to break something, not because I wanted to escape, but because I needed to remember what it felt like. To be seen, to be touched like I mattered, to be wanted without having to ask. That night, it wasn't just about him. It was about me. Coming back to myself. Remembering that my heart still beats fast for something. That my skin still responds. That I'm not invisible. I took a shower. Let the water run over me. Until the ache in my chest softened just enough to breathe again. Then I climbed into bed. The sheets were cold. But my body was still warm from him. And as I closed my eyes, I didn't think about what would happen next. I didn't plan or confess or promise. I just let the memory stay. Soft, heavy, undeniable. Because some nights don't belong to forever. Some nights only belong to the parts of us we're afraid to admit still need something more. And that night was mine.